Good afternoon and welcome to today's Mindful Moment webinar. We are talking about stress today, and I'm very excited because I've got a panel that wasn't here 5 minutes ago, so I was a little bit stressed in myself. But we've got Ajit Moore, Louis Davis, and Leanne King, and we're all going to be talking about stress because this month, April, is actually Stress Awareness Month. So we all have moments in our lives where some of us find it a bit stressful, and for some of us that could be more serious and could potentially lead to some sort of depression or anxiety. For this reason, it's important that we all actively manage our stress levels where possible and focus on what we can actually control. Today, myself and my wonderful panel, we're going to be looking at this in a little bit more detail to better understand what we can all do to help manage our stress. So I'm going to start by introducing our first panelist, Leanne King. Leanne, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm not stressed anymore. You all good? Okay. So in the whole, we're a catering company and we mostly deal with food. So we should be talking about the link with food and stress, or at least our mood. When it comes to stress, is there an obvious link to the food that we eat, or could it be that we're missing an easy fix to manage or reduce our stress levels?
Sort of. So yes, being a nutritionist within the food company, part of my role is always to try and link health and well-being back to food. The food that we choose can affect our mood just as the mood, our mood can affect the food that we choose. So it is really important that we, where possible, make conscious food choices for our overall well-being. Stress is a significant factor in mental health problems, including anxiety and depression, and it's also linked to physical health problems such as heart disease, problems with our immune system, insomnia, and digestive health problems, which obviously brings it back to food and what we're eating. So whilst having a healthy balanced diet won't necessarily eliminate our stress in our life, it can sort of help us throughout those stressful periods. And just to talk a little bit then about the science of it all, so when we are stressed, our adrenal gland releases hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, into the blood, and these help make us more alert, help us focus more and concentrate. And this would be sort of more like the fight or flight kind of response that we would have, which over the short period of time is actually completely fine. And this will increase our heart rate, our blood pressure, our memory will become sharper. And again, this is fine for the short term, but in the long term, if these hormones are continued to be released, it can actually reduce other hormones such as serotonin, which helps regulate our mood, our digestion, and our appetite. And so our appetite may actually become reduced. If we then focus in, solely on appetite and, the fight or flight, like prolonged sort of stress scenario, we obviously need more energy for this fight or flight, and therefore we may tend to crave higher fat, sugar and salt foods to just keep us going. So, if you're working if you're really busy in work and you've got a really long, or tight deadline, and you're working really long hours to get it done, that's when you'll crave those foods. And that's when you need to try and come out of your subconscious and take more come out of the subconscious and make more conscious decisions on your food choice, so that you would have a better sustained source of energy rather than high sugar foods. You've got an instant boost, loads of energy, and you can keep going, to get that deadline done. But then with that boost comes a slump, then you crave more sugar. So really trying to focus in on having a healthy, balanced diet when you're stressed. And I know that's easier said than done, but that it really is key to stabilize the blood sugar, so that you don't have those peaks and troughs of blood sugar. So what I would recommend is that that you base your meals around starchy carbohydrates. You opt for whole grain varieties because that will release the energy more slowly. Aim for your 5 a day because that will give you lots of vitamins and minerals, which will help support your immune system and help you keep going. And ensure that you start the day with a good balanced breakfast. So avoid those sugary cereals and caffeine, just to keep you going when you're feeling a little bit stressed. And you may want to also kind of mix your plant and animal-based protein along with a little bit of carbohydrates. So if instead of in the afternoon having kind of that chocolate bar, which sometimes we need it in stressful situations, but if you're trying to be more mindful about what you're eating, within this situation, what about maybe having a piece of apple and some peanut butter? So you've got your protein from a healthier source, you've got your carbohydrates, you've got a little bit of a sugar boost as well, and that will kind of help sustain your energy, keep you full, hopefully stop you craving those energy dense foods, and help you kind of work through that fight or flight response as well. Hopefully that kind of made a little bit of sense to you, a bit of a whistle-stop tour on the science. But stress, the food that we eat won't necessarily eliminate the stress, but it can help us control it and kind of help the other repercussions that you have due to being stressed.
That's wonderful.
Long story short.
Thanks, Leanne. Leanne, just quickly, so replacing chocolate with apple and peanut butter is okay, yeah?
Yeah, well, it's a healthier option. Can still be anything in excess. So eating loads of peanut butter, obviously will add the calories on too. But there's more nutritional value from an apple and some peanut butter than there would be from, say, dare I say, a Mars bar or any other form of chocolate bar.
As you saying that, I'm putting my Mars bar away, and I'll go get some apple and peanut butter later. So next, we're going to talk to Harjeet. Harjeet, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
That's great. Now that we've looked at the link between stress and food, I have a two-part question for you, if that's okay. How do you think we are seeing stress impact us in the workplace currently? And then thinking of it from a people perspective, what advice would you give to our managers who have people within their teams who might be a little bit more stressed than normal themselves?
Brilliant. Thank you, Evan. That's a great question. As Evan mentioned at the beginning of the call, it is Stress Awareness Month. We do have some really great reading materials within the UMATA portal as part of Stress Awareness. And what I thought I'd do is just kind of go through some stats with you guys just to start off with. So this stuff is available in the portal. So when we talk about the state of the nation, so we have 65% of people who felt more stressed since COVID restrictions started. We've got 53% admit to feeling more anxious than usual, and 43% feel more depressed than usual. And when you think about those figures, they're quite high from that perspective. So when we start to kind of break that down and look at the causes of stress, so what are the top causes of lockdown stress, for example? So you've got 46% of people feel disconnected to others, and I think we've all kind of experienced that ourselves. 54% feel isolated, again, something that we can all relate to. 46% said uncertainty about things when they do go back to normal, and that is becoming a high source of stress. And that's whether you're going back into the workplace or just kind of starting to reconnect with friends and family. 36% of people reported difficulty in concentrating, and 38% feel a lack of motivation. So what can we do to combat this stress? There's lots of techniques throughout the webinars that we've done so far that looked at kind of the mindfulness, whether it's to do with eating, what you do after work, how you manage your diary. But I'm just going to talk a bit through about some of the tips that you can take away. We talk a lot about mindfulness, so practicing mindfulness, and it's something that doesn't come easy to me. So I can relate to people when they say, what is all this mindfulness about? It's not going to help me. And that was me. I was one of those people. And now I've started doing it, I can genuinely see the benefits. being outside more with nature. Again, I'm not a great walker, but I have started to get outside more, and particularly more going, it's just a brisk walk. You know, I don't have to be walking for an hour, but just getting some fresh air. And that's getting fresh air regardless of what the weather's like. I kind of find, you know, I do prefer days like today when it's a little bit colder, it's a bit grey. So I do like kind of the wind and all that type of stuff. So I do kind of enjoy doing that. Getting a good night's sleep, that is so important. And I think it's one of the top things from me personally that I've learned. It's so important to my stress levels as well as my overall well-being. And, you know, I love a good tracker for everything. So I track my sleep and I look at when I've had a good night's sleep versus when I've had a bad night's sleep or how many times I've been awake. And I can feel that it affects me the next day. I think it will affect my family as well. They probably say the same. They say exactly what type of mood I'm in the day after. Staying well hydrated. Again, it was something that I never used to do. I'd have the odd cups of coffee, I'd take cups of water up with me, but what I tend to do now is I have 2 of these size bottles that I do take upstairs with me every morning to my office, and I make sure I've drank them at least by the end of the day. So keeping well hydrated is beneficial. Making time for friends and family to start to reconnect again. And again, some people might find that difficult because we've been indoors. We've not really had to socialise with people face to face, and it can be quite daunting. But just put yourself out there, have a bit of fun, have a bit of a laugh. Exercise, which I'm going to touch on a little bit later as well. But getting some sort of aerobic exercise, again, even if that's a quick walk, that would help. And also unplugging from digital devices. You know, I'm guilty of lying in bed on my phone, and the amount of time my phone is dropped in my face because I'm just there where I should be sleeping. It is good to try and put your phones away, put your iPads away, laptops, whatever it is, and just have your bedroom as your relaxation and your sleep space. And you'll kind of see the difference it will make just to kind of calm you down. And that's my tips. I will cover exercise a bit later on. Thank you, Evan.
Thank you very much, Harjeet. So next we're going to hear from Louis, and Louis is our retail director within ESS. So I can only imagine that he leads a very stressful life. So Louis, first of all, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So in a fast-paced world of retail, where it's been pretty much non-stop with COVID and everything else in defence, and government services, which obviously you look after too, what have you found useful in terms of managing your own stress levels through this whole period?
I think from my perspective, it's around being really focused on key priorities, and in a world where we all have a million and one things to do, making sure that any sort of plan is 100% clear, and that in yourself, and certainly myself, you don't get distracted. I am, speaking from position of authority, love getting involved in different projects and helping and collaborating people, but that can lead to quite a difficult position for yourself. And I'm sure there's many other people like that. You know, you don't like saying no, or you feel you're missing out on different things. So what I would say is that prioritization on key projects, making sure that you talk and communicate well with your team and other Compass colleagues and your own family, really, just managing expectations on what is achievable, and then really focusing on delivering those things, because it certainly makes you feel better because you've achieved those goals and you've got some finite measures of how you've actually got on.
That's great. Thank you very much, Louis. I'm going to move on to my next question for you, if that's okay, whilst I've got you on the screen. What would you say would be one of your top tips for helping with stress? Obviously, you've given us some ideas there, but if you had to pick one top tip, what would you say that is?
I would say making sure that you've got some thinking me time, the mindful moments piece. That personally, I was one of those people that always said that they would do it and always said that people should do it, but didn't actually practice what I preach, which was really hypocritical. So the more that I've managed to do that, of scheduling time in the diary just to to take a break, to relax, to wind down. As you say, it's very, very sort of fast paced. It really, helps you reset, and you realise how sometimes I guess stress is the word. How sometimes you can be stressed, and when you do take that time just to unwind, it suddenly makes you realise how important those moments are. And it doesn't matter how tough you are, and we're all quite tough individuals, that I think everybody needs that time just for themselves to gather their thoughts and not necessarily think about some of the more challenging things, or perhaps the targets and priorities, or what you're going to do the next day. So certainly for me, that's worked, and I'll thoroughly recommend that to everybody.
Yeah, a bit of self-care doesn't go amiss. Some time for ourselves just to reflect is definitely beneficial. Thanks, Louis. Leanne, would you mind sharing a top tip?
Yep. So I would say to reduce your screen time. So take a step back. Obviously, a lot of us are working from home more now, and having back-to-back calls, and sometimes lunchtime can just disappear, and you've had an impromptu call, and that can all add to the stress. So I would say take a step back, reduce your screen time in the evenings, maybe do something that you enjoy, or a hobby or something, or even go for a long walk, just to kind of take your mind off the craziness of the day that you've had. Again, mindfulness is a great thing. If you can start kind of controlling your breathing, and take a step back and just concentrate on your breathing, that can also really help as well.
Great. Thanks, Leanne. Interestingly, the whole mindful breathing thing is something that I think within ESS we're doing a lot more of, and we're definitely seeing the benefits in terms of when we're in meetings and things like that. We can see that we're a little bit more focused. So yeah. Thanks, Leanne. That's great. Harjeet, I'm going to come to you next. Have you got a top tip?
I do. My top tip always comes back to exercising. Personally, I love exercising. And when you do find yourself getting a bit stressed, it does produce more adrenaline within the body. And when you exercise, and again, it could just be a brisk walk around the block, it does release happy hormones. So I'd always encourage people to kind of do something, even if it's anything that just gets your heart pumping a little bit is really beneficial. I mentioned the UMATA portal with stress awareness information. There's a lot of information in there. Please take the time to have a look at it. There's also a guide in there in terms of how to reduce stress. It helps you recognise signs of stress, what you can do to combat it, the different types of stress there are, how you can deal with stress, whether it's at work or at home. So it's really beneficial to read. That's it for me. Thank you, Evan.
Thank you very much. So yeah, that's pretty much our top tips for today. Sorry, we lost connection there for a second, I think. So that's pretty much our top tips for today. But I wanted to just kind of reassure the guys that are in unit and are making the time to watch and join us today, that regardless of how busy the unit must be and everything else, it's really important for you to take time for yourselves and to make sure that you're actually looking after yourself, because we're not going to be of any use to anyone if we keep pushing ourselves at 110% and we just keep going, and then we're eventually going to burn out. So if you are feeling stressed and you are feeling under pressure, just make that time, even if it's literally 5 minutes, to go outside and just take a quick walk around the building, whatever it may be. Like Harjeet and Leanne and Louis all said, it's about just taking that time for yourselves and just allowing yourself to reset. I know being out in the units is slightly different to the environments that we're all working in at the moment, although it looks like Louis is out in the unit today. But we just acknowledge all the great work that you guys are doing, and we just want to make sure that you are looking after yourselves as well as each other every day. So just be mindful that if you are feeling stressed out, you give yourself that 5 minutes just to get a breather. Before we move on, to wrapping up really, and I go back to the panel for their final thoughts, if they want to let me know if they've got any final thoughts to share. I just wanted to remind everyone of some resources that are available. So obviously there's the Mindful Moment Toolbox talk that came out this week or last week now, and it's all blending into one for me personally, but it is a really useful safety conversation type toolbox talk where you can just really take 5 minutes with your team and actually just talk them through how they can manage their stress at work. If you haven't already, please have a look at and subscribe to or follow the We Are ESS YouTube page and Instagram and Facebook. That'll be wonderful. And finally, if there are any questions around mental health, remember we have got now loads of mental health first aiders. Harjeet could probably tell me off the top of her head how many we've got already in the business. I think it's like 60. I think it's like 60 at the moment, or maybe 60 at the moment. But we are moving towards over 100 planned already for training. So that's great. But if you do have any specific questions or you do want to reach out, please contact either Harjeet, myself, or Alan, or ask your manager who the nearest mental health first aider is to you. And finally, there are also our nutritionist team or our wellness team. Again, if you've got any questions, please reach out to the three of them. I don't believe any of them are not going to get back to you because they are the most helpful, lovely people I've met. So please do reach out to them and just ask your questions. We will be back next month with our next Mindful Moment. And if you want to know more about any of the wellness stuff, please sign up to the newsletter by emailing ess.wellness@compassgroup.co.uk. So our next month's one will be about mindful walking. So ties in nicely with all the good stuff we've said today. And I'm just going to look to my panel and see if any of them have a final thought they would like to share or anything like that. Oh, Louis got his hand up. That's great. I'll bring Louis back on.
Thanks, Evan. I'd just like to say that what we've heard some really good things about managing, stress ourselves. I think it's also important to remember that we've got some fantastic people, as you said, Evan, around support as our colleagues, family members, and that support network is going to be really key. And it might be different for all of us, but talking to people about how we feel and not being afraid to share those things can really take a massive weight off. And it's not wrong to feel that way. It's just try and find someone that you feel comfortable talking to and just having that decent conversation, even as a kind of distraction can massively help. So we will do it in different ways, but just don't be afraid of reaching out.
That's great. Thanks, Lou. And interesting, you've just said that, and somebody's just sent a question and about workshops around mental health in the future. So we have got some mental health first aid courses running at the moment, but in terms of actual mental health awareness workshops, there is going to be some stuff coming out through the UMATA campaign, through the learning portal. But if there's anything in particular that you're looking for, can I just encourage you to reach out to myself or Harjeet, and we'll get back to you, and we'll try and see what we can do to make sure we can get you whatever training or resources you need. Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining. It's really great that you were able to make the time. I think we had like 96 people on, so thank you all for joining, and we will be back next month, like I said, and we'll be talking about mindful walking. Thank you all for joining, and thank you to my lovely panel. You guys were amazing. Thank you, and we'll speak to you all soon.
Thank you.
See you. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.